And this is the live broadcast of the Sydney International Piano Competition 2023. And joining me now is one of the chamber musicians who's going to be joining up with some of the competitors to perform in various pieces. The cellist himself, Li-Wei Qin. Thanks so much for finding some time.
Pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, what do you look for when you perform with a pianist and these rather wonderful works of music? You know, how easy does it to find the right chemistry?
It's never easy.
Right.
To start, because obviously, you know, we have very limited time in rehearsing, and personally, we didn't know each other.
Right.
So I didn't know the competitors. So it's about, you know, within a very small time frame to find musical language that we could share in front of the audience. And with some of them, we started on similar paths, you know, similar perhaps music background and similar taste in music. But a few others, we started quite wide apart and about finding a middle ground. And it's a very interesting scenario where I think in the future for these young pianists, you know, going to chamber music festivals, it's not unlike what we are having right now, because you're meeting people fresh and for the first time, and then you have to find the common ground and the common language, and then in order to present a very convincing performance for the audience. Yeah.
And also very quickly. You have to do it in a very short period of time, don't you? And these pianists have to jump from one thing to another and be able to read.
And for me also, because there was some doubling up of the same repertoire, so I had to remember what this person needed, the other person wants. You know, that's slightly different. So it's about also for me to be very flexible.
Well, I guess that doubling up happened with the Chopin sonata, because we are, of course, here with 32 pianists.
That's right.
And they will, of course, choose probably one of the best composers as far as,
Chopin,
the most famous composers as far as piano goes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Tell us about that sonata. It's a very special work, isn't it?
Well, it's, you know, Chopin didn't write very much for other instruments, mainly for piano. So we are very lucky as a cellist. Now, often I will say, you know, we are not so lucky. You know, your Beethoven never wrote a cello concerto, Brahms never wrote a cello concerto, but Chopin actually wrote a very profound and very significant, I say, cello sonata for us. And it's not an easy work. It's in 4 movements. Of course, the most famous, if you like, or most memorable movement probably is the 3rd movement. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, and fantastically balanced work between the 2 instruments. I think for the pianists, it's also challenging in many ways, because having so many notes, but at the same time working with the cellist, you always have to find the dynamical balance, because we're not naturally a very loud instrument, cello. So for them to have all these notes well demonstrated and pronounced, but at the same time have to be aware of the dynamical balance. So it's a good challenge. It's a good competition actually piece for pianists, I think.
It's interesting. Yeah. What does a pianist need to think about when they play with the cello? What do you like to hear? Where do you feel the best supported from a pianist?
It's a very good question. I think, as I said, because our register is very, very kind of middle, like a tenor, baritone type of thing. So naturally, we are not, the sound world is not so bright compared to a violin. So for them to work with the cellist, first of all, I like to see them to be aware of where the melodies are for the cello or where the melodies are for themselves. So they could actually have different layers of expressions between the different instruments. And sometimes, you know, they have to be accompanying me with a very gentle touch, because obviously maybe in my part it's written piano too. And a piano for a cellist in this hall is quite different to a piano for a violinist in that hall probably. And I always say to them that, you know, to be aware, at least playing chamber music, that your forte in a Chopin cello sonata is a very different forte to a Rachmaninoff piano concerto with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra at the Opera House. It's a different forte. It perhaps might have a similar character in forte, but the actual dynamical volume is quite different. So to include this chamber music making segment in this competition, I think it's a great touch.
It's imperative, isn't it, that they know both parts, though, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They have to know your part back to front as well as their own piano part, right? In order to be able to really to do all of those things.
Absolutely.
Right?
So therefore, when I'm working with them, it is actually pretty obvious if this person has done a lot of chamber music or not. One could get the notes in pretty quickly, but the awareness, and also, all these wonderful pianists that they have the chops. I mean, the fingers are no problem, but listening is a different game. And how do you listen? How do you react? And how flexible are you? This is something that you could not do it without me being there. They with let's say a Tchaikovsky piano concerto, they could prepare for the last, 10 years. And there's a certain mode and the conductor more or less will follow you. Whereas for chamber music, and depending on the material, and sometimes I will follow you, but sometimes you have to follow me too. So this type of flexibility actually demonstrates how well a chamber musician you are.
Let's have a look at a couple of the different pieces. We talked, of course, about the Chopin. You said Rachmaninoff, a couple of them have chosen that. Your list had Brahms on there as well. I think a couple of them have chosen that. What about Beethoven? Anybody doing Beethoven?
Nope.
No. Shostakovich?
There's one Shostakovich. Only one person actually chose Rachmaninoff.
Okay.
So we have double Brahms, F
Right.
major sonata, double Chopin, single Shostakovich, single Rachmaninoff.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting choice, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I didn't expect that. I mean, I actually, just before this competition, I was doing a recital in Eucharia in Adelaide. And I put in Chopin and Mendelssohn. And then Mendelssohn's in the list
Yes.
as too.
Yeah,
It's on my
that's right.
list. But nobody chose the Mendelssohn. So, so I was hoping that that the run through in Eucharia would have helped. But anyway, nobody chose it. But it's fine. It's fine.
Well, Rachmaninoff is rather nice. What are the big things the big challenges that face a pianist in that particular piece?
Well, I think it's very similar to Chopin.
Okay.
Because there's so many notes. And a lot of the, for example, with 10 fingers down on the piano with the mezzo piano, as in the volume, to a mezzo piano with me on single bow, single finger on the cello, that's very different. That's very different. So a pianist, we did it yesterday, and Philip did a good job. It's really listen to the material, and really sense the inner pulse and the inner intentions, and hopefully demonstrate that to the audience too. So that comes from a lot of reacting and listening. And I think the Rachmaninoff sonata needs a lot of that, and especially for pianists, it's because there's so much piano repertoire in the Rachmaninoff, world. It's very easy to fall into that mode of Rachmaninoff piano concerto playing.
Okay.
Because this sonata is written basically next to I think it's opus 18, 19, next to the second piano concerto. So it's very close. So it's so easy. I'm sure they've all played the second piano concerto. Yes. So it's very easy to fall into that, that habit of playing the concerto mode, because the material is so similar. But it's not.
No.
It's not. So,
Okay.
It's interesting.
And of course, Brahms is in there as well.
Brahms is a little easier in kind of doing the balance.
Right.
But musically, of course, it's late Brahms, so it's very deep and it's very difficult to get, it's not your Rachmaninoff in the way that there are not so many approachable melodies to go for, if you like. There are not so many beauty melodies, although the piece itself is wonderfully beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you come out, with Rachmaninoff, you could actually hum a tune. Whereas a Brahms is difficult to say I hum a tune out of a Brahms. It's a little bit stingy with beautiful melodies, if you like. But overall, I think it's a magical piece. It's one of my favorites. Actually, I've been playing this piece since I was 14, 15. I did this for my Tchaikovsky competition semi-final. So it's a piece I've lived for a very, very long time.
And you said one person's chosen Shostakovich.
Yes.
Yeah,
which I'll be doing soon.
Right. Yes. So it's fresh in your mind. How does it vary then, of course, to all of these others? Because Shostakovich and rhythms and harmony and all those different things that he was very, very, very busy with.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a work. I think Shostakovich, like all his music, you have to be emotionally involved. The material itself is probably not as complex as, say, Brahms in terms of compositional material, but in terms of emotional input, one needs to really devote himself into this piece of music. I mean, for this to work, I think both the pianist and I really have to feel that we are in this world. And also, Shostakovich wrote for a lot of silent movies, so it's actually the visual aspect of this work is paramount.
Very, very, very interesting. So many young musicians, and you, of course, you are performing all over the world. Well, older. I was going to say that, but all over the world is what I was going to say. But, what sort of role do you think music can play in the world today? We have a world facing a number of serious problems. And, as a musician, what do you think the musician's role is?
Well, I mean, that's a very big question for a very short interview, but I think what I can say is I'm very happy to see so many nationalities represented in this competition. I think whether or not it's this side of the world or the other side of the world, yes, we are more polarized than before, but I think music is a platform. Well, at least this competition has created a platform for all of us to be under the same roof and creating, with a common goal in creating music, in sharing music with the audience, and with this online platform now, it's all over the world. I have fans in China watching yesterday's performances and commenting, and also it's at least for that half an hour, that sonata, I hope people can forget about the flag, about the color, about your opinions about certain political agendas. I think just for the half an hour, let's all sit in the same room, looking at the same goal and sharing the same beauty. Yeah.
What a beautiful way to bring this interview to a close. Li-Wei Qin, thank you so much for talking to me. Cellist extraordinaire, and of course a chamber musician who is combining and collaborating with some of the contestants of this year's Sydney International Piano Competition. Thank you for joining the live broadcast.